Hello and welcome to the fourth video of Section 4. In this video we're going to install a replica server. Additional Vue connection servers are referred to or called replica servers. This is due to the nature in which Vue shares its configurations between multiple connection servers using the Adam database, meaning that they are essentially copies of the first connection server that you install. Additional connection servers are generally deployed for either availability reasons or they act as a backup in the event of a connection server failing, but also for scalability reasons if your environment scales to thousands of users, as a single connection server or replicant server can only support up to 4,000 users. So what are we going to learn in this video? In this video we're going to start by looking at the configuration requirements for the server that is going to have the Horizon Vue replica server software installed upon it. We'll finish the video by installing the replica server software itself. As the replica server is just another role of the connection server, then it's no surprise that it needs to build with the same following configuration. It will need to be running either Windows Server 2008, 2012 or 2016, have 4 virtual CPUs, a 1 gig network card, 10 gig of memory and 60 gig of disk space for the install. This machine was pre-built during the installation and setup part right at the beginning of this course. So now we're going to install our replica server, so our second copy of our connection server that, as the name suggests, is a copy of that first connection server and the database and all the components that go with it. So we've logged on to the console of the server that's going to host the role of the replica server here, and then we are going to navigate to our shared folder for our domain controller where we have our software folder, our Horizon software, and we're looking for the Horizon connection server x64. Double click to launch. So this is exactly the same installer as we used in the previous section when we installed our first connection server. Don't forget the replica server is another role of the very said same connection server. So we're going to click run here, and now we can see our connection server installer launch. So the first thing we see is the welcome to the installation wizard for VMware Horizon 7 connection server. So we click next to continue. Now we have our VMware end user license agreement. So we need to click the radio button to accept that license agreement, then click next to continue. And then we have our destination folder. So where is the software going to be installed to? By default, that's program files, VMware, VMware View and server. You can change that if you want, but in this example we will leave that as default. So click next to continue. And now we have our installation options. So the type of connection server instance that we're going to install. So this is a replica server, so we need to select the option for replica server, and then it tells us here we're going to perform a replica instance install joining an existing server instance. So effectively a second backup server to our original. So that could be a backup or for scalability purposes. We want to install HTML access. Particularly be aware of this if you did that on your primary connection server or the first connection server, that if this server takes over from that server, it needs to take over the same features and functions. So ideally you would want to have HTML access. Unless this was going to be a server that was purely dedicated to another role and you were going to use tagging and only desktop pools were going to come through this server, and that might not allow HTML access. Finally on the screen we choose the IP protocol, IPv4 or v6. We need to ensure that we keep them the same, so we can't mix and match IP versions across the connection server instances. So our lab is IPv4, so we'll make sure that's highlighted and click next to continue. So next we need to tell the replica server where the source server is. So which server is it going to replicate? So we can either use a host name or IP address in here. So we're going to use the host name of HZN7-CS1. That's the name of our initial connection server. And then we're going to click next to continue. So now we need to configure the firewall. So we can do this automatically or don't do it at all. If we do it automatically, then it's going to go away and make sure all the appropriate ports are open. So 443 for our HTTPS, and then 4172 for PC over IP, 8443 for HTML access, and so on. So we'll allow Windows to configure that automatically. We click next to continue, and now we see that ready to install the program. So we're going to basically install into this location. If you're happy with that, we can click install and off the installation goes. So we're going to copy the new files, update the components, continue with the copy of new files, creating shortcuts. So you'll also see a shortcut up here on the desktop. And now you can see it's replicating the DDMDS directory services. So this is our Adam database. So it's going to install that onto this machine. So now it's going to initial LDAP replication. So we're just going to let that replication complete. So this is going and retrieving the information from the first connection server in our environment and then bringing over all that information. So that information contains items such as information about users, about desktop pools and resources, etc. So that'll take a few minutes just to replicate the information across. So now we're just loading directory services schemas, so the VDI schema, VDI starter, and we continue with the installation. So now we're loading the directory services, and then we're synchronizing, make sure they're all up to date, that we haven't changed anything on our connection server since we started the install. HTML access being installed, removing the backup files, and then complete. So now we see our installer has completed. We have a next steps here. That's basically to show the documentation. So if you want to see the documentation, check the box. So in this example, we don't want to see the documentation. And if you're happy with that, we click finish. So you'll see that we have the icon here, so we can actually launch the Horizon console and manage the server from here as well. We can also check our Horizon View Administrator console to ensure that the connection server or the replica server we've just installed now appears on our inventory. So to do this, from our Horizon 7 Administrator console, from the inventory section, if we expand View Configuration, click on Servers, and then we can see on the Connection Servers tab, we have here our HZN7-CS2. So you can see what version of Horizon. We've installed PC over IP Secure Gateway. It's enabled. We can see the settings here, and we can see that it hasn't yet backed up. That last backup refers to the Adam database. So we have now successfully installed our replica server. In the next video, we're going to install a security server.